Well, we're continuing this week in a series that we're calling Begin with Why. Begin with Why. Now, this week I was considering this and looking for some great questions. I was pontificating, if you will, and just really got into some deep stuff that I thought I should share with you guys before we get rolling here. So you're going to want to stay awake with me because these are real mind blowers, okay? And the first one was this, and I just, it really took me by surprise, actually, is why do your feet smell, but your nose runs? Have you ever considered that? Why do your feet smell, but your nose runs? These things don't make sense to me. We drive in traffic a good bit. We're back and forth between our campuses every now and then, so we're on the freeway a lot. And so we end up, in traffic. But why is the time of day with the slowest traffic called rush hour? No one is going anywhere. There's no rushes happening. I sat on 405 yesterday going nowhere in rush hour. Why? Questions that we're considering. Begin with why. What about this? We've all been guilty of this. But as a tourist, when you're doing the tourist thing, maybe you're in another state, what we do is we pay a lot of money to go up these really beautiful buildings like the Space Needle, the Empire State Building, the Columbia Tower. We pay a lot of money to go up the building, and then we get to the top and we stick more money into the telescope so that we can look back down on the ground and see things close up. Why do we do that? I was just in that park 20 minutes ago, and I could see everything a whole lot better. This last one, this should be happening. But why it's not, I don't know. Why don't we ever see the headline? We should be seeing this all the time. Psychic wins lottery. That should be happening all the time. Why don't we ever see that happen? In all sincerity, though, the question that we started off with that's going to help ground us in this series is, which why are you living by? Are you living by the whys of life that you can control and do something about? Or are you living for the whys that you can't control? We would call them the lightning bolts of life. The things that cause all of us to scratch our head. I don't know why that happened. I don't know why my family member suddenly passed away. I don't know why this tragedy took place. I don't know why we had an earthquake in this area and innocent people were killed. Why? Which why are you living by? And what we said is when we take time to live by the whys that we can control, we're actually going to create clarity in our life. And if we live by the whys that we can't control, you're going to end up in desperation and discouragement, frustrated, disappointed. So if you remember, those of you that were here last weekend, we asked the big why. Why are we all here? And we said, we're here to please God. We're here to bring Him pleasure. We're here to live a life that honors Him. And in Jesus' words, He said, we're here to love God. We're here to love people. This is why we're here. And then we took time through that message just to break down the whys that surround the big why. Like, why should I read my Bible? Well, as you guys know, that's one of the ways that we get to know the heart and the character and the nature of God. Or, why should I talk to God? Why do I even pray? Why do I even try to talk to God? That's how we develop a relationship with Him. What about this question? Why should I bring it up? Why should I share the news of the kingdom of heaven, of this great treasure that I've discovered? And so through this series, again, I'm not trying to answer, and we're certainly not trying to answer every why that we're going to come across in life, because there are some whys that puzzle all of us. But what we found is that when we begin with the right why, we actually lay a foundation for the highest level of motivation for our life. We clarify our whys, and when we do that, it acts like an injection of motivation when I know why I do what I do. If you're here this weekend and Maybe you're in a rut in life. Maybe you're in a place in life where you're just feeling, I'm not feeling work, and I feel like I'm in the rat race, and maybe you're stuck, or maybe you've ended up in a place that you never thought you would end up. If you're in a rut, I just want to ask you the question, would you take time and consider why you're doing what you're doing? I believe that for all of us, this will create a freshness in our life. And I think the answer is not always that we would have to do something new. It's that potentially we could do the same thing in a new way. Doing the same thing in a fresh and new way. So beginning with why every single day, I believe actually helps us get back on track. Will help get us out of that ditch of life, so to speak. So here's how we say it. When you clarify your why, you clarify your life. When you clarify your why, you clarify your life. When we begin with why, it breeds intentionality in our everyday. In our mornings when we wake up, continually reminding ourselves, this is why I'm getting up today. This is why I'm excited to get out of bed this morning. A morning routine, a daily affirmation if you need it. A life plan that we live by. And I can just speak from my own experience. This year, start of 2016, I just freshened up my morning routine and did some things different. So I'm not doing anything drastically different in terms of what I do every day. I'm just doing the same thing in a fresh way. And I just encourage you, do this, take this challenge on yourself. If you're in work and you're just like, I just kind of gotten into a rut, man, take on this challenge to freshen it back up again and ask yourself, why do I get up? Why do I do what I do every single day? In fact, if we're here for God's pleasure, I think one of the greatest things we can do is say, God, how can I serve you today? Creates disciplines in our life. Discipline, it seems like it would be the thing that would suck freedom out of our life, doesn't it? It's like, I've got to live discipline and on a schedule. But actually, I've found discipline actually creates more freedom and more clarity. Not the opposite. More freedom, more clarity. In 1 Corinthians 10:23, it says, I have the right to do anything, but not everything is beneficial. Discipline. I have the right to do anything, but not everything is constructive. And as a church, we love to help people move your life forward. In your marriage, in your family, in your relationship with Christ, wherever you're at, whatever stage of life you're in, we want to see you move that forward. We have an acronym that we run by. We call it Getting Our Reps In. We move life forward relationally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. It's just kind of a checklist that we run through. How are we moving life forward in these four areas? Relationally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, moving life forward. So what I want to do, I want to spend the rest of our time digging in to the whys behind why we do church. Why are we here today? Why'd you turn up to church today? If we're here to bring pleasure to God, if we're here to love God and love people with everything that we are, then it's tremendously helpful to address this question. Why am I here in church today? Why do I take time every single week to create openness in my calendar to show up and to serve God? So why church? So we're going to ask these questions. If you're taking notes, we have our online outlines you can always use, or good old-fashioned pen and paper. Because here's the honesty, like when you write stuff down, you'll actually remember it. If you don't write it down, you're not going to remember much. So if you're serious about learning and growing, we encourage you, write something down. First question, why should I help out? Why should I serve? Why should I show up and help out? Church is not, like we said it earlier, this is not just a place that we attend. It's not a restaurant. This is not a movie theater. It's actually a community that we belong to. That word community implies involvement on our part. Community is not something you observe. Community is something you engage with. So why? Why should I help out? Galatians 5, look at this. For you have been called to live in freedom, my brothers and sisters. But don't use your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Instead, use your freedom to serve one another. For the whole law can be summed up in this one command: love your neighbor as you love yourself. This is why we do church, guys. It's not just about us. We're here to serve each other, to meet the needs of each other. You know, if we really believe what we believe is really real, if we really believe what we believe is really real, then why are we not going all in with our serve? In other words, if we really believe what we believe about Jesus and who he said he is, if we really believe that he's God in the flesh, that he died for you and I, for the local church, this very thing that we engage in, then why are we not giving everything? And I think the only sensible response that we could have is that we would go all in and find every opportunity to serve each other, to meet the needs of one another, and to serve in the local church. Jesus said in Mark 10, he said, "Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant." That all of us would find a capacity to use what God has given us and put in our life to serve and to lift the needs of his church. Recently, I came across an organization that really blew my mind, what this organization is involved with and doing. And it's transforming people's lives every single day. And so I was so compelled just reading more about it. It inspired me so much, I just wanted to share what's going on in this organization with you guys today. And before I tell you what the organization is, I just wanted to share with you some of the value that this organization is bringing to people in our world every single day. And I thought this was inspiring for all of us. So here's just kind of a quick rundown. First of all, it helps people find their purpose in life. Sounds pretty good to get started. That's a pretty awesome thing. People that are down and out and struggling. I was so impressed how this organization helps people restore their marriages and their family units. Helps individuals work through addictions that they're dealing with. It helps feed people that are hungry. It's literally giving meaning to people's lives. Helping rescue people from human trafficking. Helping people overcome sexual brokenness. It's teaching people, this is awesome, it's teaching people how to live their fullest potential in their life. And this last one I love is that it's teaching people how to serve and meet the needs of others. Who would like to be a part of an organization like that? That's pretty awesome. You know, the name of this organization is called the Local Church. That's what we're engaging in right now. The greatest organization in history. There's not an organization alive today that has the longevity or the track record of the local church. Nothing even touches it. Not any charity, not Apple, not Google. There is nothing in the history of the world like the local church that you and I engage with each and every week. And this is why we ought to turn up and help out and serve, because it's the greatest organization on the planet. So why do we do what we do as the church? Second question, why should I tithe? This is a good question. A lot of people struggle with this one. Some people might posture, if you're newer to church life or it's a new concept for you, some people's question might be, why should I pay God? Or why do I pay the church? Why do we do that? And I come from a business background. You guys have heard me say that. And my parents were entrepreneurs growing up, still are. And the thing that we always look for is return on investment, right? You're always looking for, if I invest these dollars here, what's my return going to be? I love to look at it a little bit differently. I call it the EROI, the eternal return on investment. It's the greatest return on investment. And I think of all the investments we make, we ought to be making and try to make good investments here on earth to move our family forward and the resources to do what we need to do in life. But there's nothing greater. Like, life is just a vapor. We're here for a moment. And yet we get so focused on the here and now, we forget to think about what's after now. Why are we so short-minded? Eternal return on investment is where it's at. It's the greatest return on investment is the local church. You know, we've been teaching our son, he's 6 now, Kyan, our oldest boy, and we've been teaching him the last few years as he's starting to learn about money and how to use money. We're teaching him, okay, son, this is what we do with our money. The first thing we do is we take the first tenth, the tithe, and we bring that to God to honor him. And we do this just to show our love and our affection for God, really to say, God, thank you for everything you've given us. And so we're trying to relay this to our son, you know. And the second thing you do is you put into savings at least 10%. And then the rest of the money left over, that's yours to spend or give away or do whatever you want with. And so he's kind of like processing all this. You know how kids are. They're like trying to grasp the concept of money and why we even use it in the first place. And the other day, it's like for the first time, it really hit him. Wait, this first tenth, what am I doing with this? And he said to me, he said, Dad, how do I pay God? And I thought, man, this is such a beautiful moment. A child in their innocence, just like, how do I do that? I mean, I can't see him. Where does the money go? And I said, well, son, we give it to our local church. We give it to church. And he goes, oh, yeah. Like for him, it was just like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I get it. Okay, great, fantastic. And so in that moment, I love the innocence of what was going on in his heart, and for all of us to really translate that moment. You know, tithing is not just about paying God. It's not just about giving to the church, but we're first bringing back to God what's already his. And here's what happens. When we first come to church, or maybe if God's new to you, when we first come to a relationship with him, we come from the mindset that everything belongs to me. I worked hard, I got my education, I'm the one that did this. And so it's real easy to think, I'm paying, I'm being so generous, aren't I, God, when I do that for you? And the reality is, we actually come to the realization that God has given us everything we have. And when you come from the mindset that God, everything I have is yours, in the first place, my mind, my family, the country. I mean, who in here chose to be born in America? None of us. We just were. Explain that one. Where'd that come from? And if we've been given so much, is it unreasonable to say, God, you only want 10%? Is that, you're saying you only want 10%? And I think that's a mind shift that we can take. This is why, because we're returning first things back to God, what already belongs to him. Malachi 3:8, prophet speaking here, it says, will a man rob God? Now he's speaking on behalf of God. And he says, yet you are robbing me. But you say, now this is to the Israelite people. So the people are saying back, God, how have we robbed you? And he says, in your tithes and contributions. You are cursed with a curse, for you are robbing me, the whole nation of you. And then he says, bring the full tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house, and thereby put me to the test, says the Lord of hosts, if I will not open up the windows of heaven for you and pour down for you a blessing until there is no more need. He basically goes on to say, I will rebuke the devourer. Basically, I'll take care of your business. I'll look after the things. I'll do things for you that money could never buy. God's protection, his covering. It's the one area where God says, test me. I encourage you, when you tithe, when you engage God this way, take time to really say, God, I'm doing this out of full devotion for you. And in this moment, I'm testing you, God, just like your word says I can. That you would look after our family, God. You would continue to create pathways and avenues that we could continue to be generous on every occasion. That we could look of ways to give back into your house, God, back into the world. And you know, I love this about God because he's not just concerned about what we do. God is also concerned why we do what we do. In Matthew 23, Jesus was found correcting some scribes and Pharisees. He's like, hey guys, I know you tithe on every nickel, every penny that comes in, but you've neglected some things that are even as important or more important. And he says, you've neglected to be full of justice and mercy and faithfulness. He said, don't neglect the first, meaning don't stop tithing. That's good too. But you shouldn't neglect the second. So Jesus is balancing these two out, saying why we do what we do matters as much as what we do. So there's always three things that happen when we're participating in tithing and giving to God. The first thing is it's a heart check. Like we talked about, we're putting God first, acknowledging Him as the source of everything we had. Jesus said it this way. He said, for where your treasure is, Matthew 6:21, there your heart will be also. Have you noticed this? Whatever your hobby is, like if you have a hobby, if you're a golfer, or maybe you like classic cars, or I don't know, whatever your hobby might be, knitting and sewing, that could be a hobby. My sister-in-law does knitting and sewing. And so you might love that, but you invest all this money into things that you love, right? And what do? Your passion's there, you're excited, you talk about it all the time, you're always showing people pictures of it because you're spending money, effort, and energy. It's no different with God. When we put Him first, do you know why people like me and other people who have been tithers for years get excited? Is because our money is there. I'm investing heavily into the kingdom of God, have been since I was a young boy. And so my heart and my passion and my enthusiasm follows my money. And it's no different with God. The second thing is God's blessing is over our life. It's unexplainable. You can't explain God's blessing, but it's there. Number 3, God's plan to fund the work of the local church. It's also very practical. I mean, to think that God would have thought ahead of time, this is how I'm going to fund the work of ministry. God is so practical. I love that about God. You know, our tithing, we say this often, and I love to say this, because you can't buy your way into heaven. There's no amount you can give that will earn your salvation or goodness with God. You won't earn any favors with Him. He's not going to be like, oh, you get a better house in heaven because of that gift you just gave. How good of you. No, it's really a heart check. The heart of tithing is about a heart check. Where is our heart first and foremost? You know, when we give to the local church, we're actually equipping the work of Christ on the earth. That's what we do when we give to the local church. We bring our tithe and honor God first. We're actually equipping the works of the saints, you and I, that we would continue to go out into the earth and spread the message that Jesus Christ came to this planet for. And this is why we tithe, ladies and gentlemen, so that we can see the kingdom of God move forward on this planet. So why do we do what we do as the church? Last question. Why should I show up? And for that matter, why should I show up every weekend? Is it really that important that I'm here? I think what happens is we underestimate the very fact of our presence in the room. When you walked in today, your presence had an effect on the people around you. Right now, where you're sitting, your presence literally has an effect on the people around you. We underestimate the power of coming together for these moments to encourage one another. Look at Hebrews 10:24. It says, and let us consider how to stir one another up to love and good works, not neglecting meeting together as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another. Some of you ask this question, will people even notice if I don't come to church? And you've asked that question before. And our heart, as a local church, is that no one would ever feel that way. But the reality is that actually probably happens when we don't take time to engage with each other in community. If you slip in and you slip out, it's going to be real hard for people to notice. If you never interact, if you never engage, if you never find a way to connect and to serve on a team and get into a champion life group and get connected to other believers, it's going to be really hard. So it's not just about checking a box and showing up and sitting in a seat and attending, but showing up is about engaging together. It's about getting involved. It's about participating. So I've seen so many people over the years lose out and miss out on this point. Like something happens, an usher didn't smile quite right. They get frustrated. Pretty soon no one talked to me, no one smiled. We allow little offenses to get in the way of showing up every single weekend. I just want to say, even ushers, I'm not picking on the ushers, but even ushers have bad days. What I've realized is when people, someone's grunted at you or whatever, they either didn't notice, or secondly, they're just dealing with something really tough in their life right then. We got to give each other the benefit of the doubt. In the parking lot, don't get so ticked off at people hey man, good on you. Because sometimes you're the one that's walking through stuff and someone else needs to encourage you, and a lot of times you're the one that's going to walk up and encourage somebody else. Even if it's an usher, even if it's a high-level volunteer, that you would say, you know what, man, I'm sorry you're going through stuff. Let me pray for you. Let me speak something encouraging to you. It's just an opportunity for us to stretch ourselves, to engage together. We all have opportunities every day at work, at school, and even in church to be offended by stuff. I have opportunities. Pastor Kevin and I were talking about this. People don't think of that, even how we flow and what we do. In pastoring, we have opportunities all the time to be offended. You'd be amazed at what people would say to us. Maybe you wouldn't, maybe you would, I don't know. But you got to have the heart, a soft heart and tough skin. You just do. You got to let it roll off, because I know I look through most of the comments that come that are negative or hurtful, and usually it's because someone's hurting. Hurt people hurt people. You know what I mean? Hurt people. They don't mean to, but they hurt people. So we've just got to decide I'm going to be unoffendable. There's nothing that's going to separate me from the local church. This is where God called me. This is what I'm going to do. That's why I show up every weekend, because it's not about me. I'm going to encourage someone. I'm going to come up to Chris today. I'm going to encourage him. If nothing else gets you out of bed, the one thing you could do is make a decision. God, the reason I'm turning up today is because someone needs the life that I'm going to speak into them today. Somebody needs that life to get them through this week. We heard from Javon earlier, but Javon we talked about a few weeks back. He's a great young man in our house. And I think we have a picture with him and Pastor Kevin. Those of you that were here, you remember Javon. And Javon, is he here in this service? I don't know. Anyway, he's been getting a lot of screen. We love this guy. And the hero that I want to celebrate this weekend is his mom. At 3 years old, they turned up here at Champion Center. And she just made a decision. This is where I'm going to raise my son. Now, you want to hear a funny story? We used to have, I don't know, those of you who have been around for a while, we used to have this huge choir. We had this choir loft. I mean, this thing was ginormous, and we had a 200-person choir up there, back when choir ministry was all the rage. And we decided, hey, we're not going to do choir anymore. We're going to mix it up, stay fresh. Vision remains, methods change. We like to change methods. You guys have noticed that. And so we're like, hey, choir's going away. We're doing something different. We're not doing choir. And man, you would have thought the rapture happened. Oh, I can't believe they would take the choir away in church. Can't have church without choir. And she was telling us this story. Some of her friends were like, you need to find a new church. You need to go somewhere where they got choir ministry that'll speak to you. She's like, that's crazy. I'm not going anywhere. This is my house. This is where I'm called to be. It doesn't matter if the choir's here or not. She found a new place to serve. Now she's a Saturday night usher, one of our most faithful ushers. What would have happened in Javon's life had his mom not made a decision? I'm going to show up. I don't care. I'm not going to let petty stuff keep me from coming to church. When you're going through the toughest seasons of your life, that's the best time to be here. We don't get good and then get God. We say this all the time. We don't get good so that we can turn up and feel good about ourselves. We come to church to receive the grace of God, to encourage people, and get encouraged in the process. I realized a long time ago that church is not just about me. Church is not just about my needs and my stuff, but I come every week, like I talked about, to lift people up. And you can come with the same way, wherever you serve, whatever you're doing, you can come with a mindset. I'm going to lift someone today in my section. I'm a section leader. I hang out in the section. I'm an usher. I work with children's ministry. I'm out in the parking lots encouraging people. I'm serving in the community in Champions Foundation. I'm serving in Champion Life Groups. I'm on the worship team. I can encourage people, and all of us can turn up and encourage people each weekend. And I'm always amazed how God takes care of me when I'm focused on others. He finds a way to encourage me. He finds a way to lift me. And you know, when I look across the room and I see bold men, I see Pastor Frankie, and I see Chris, and I see Andre, I see these guys worshiping God, and I see Josh, and I look over, and their presence in the room encourages me. I know like my good friends, they're going through stuff, and they turn up anyway, and they stick their hands in the air and say, God, I know you're going to show up today. That's how we know. This is why we do church, ladies and gentlemen. Why should we do it? Because people's spirits are lifted, they're encouraged, their hurts are healed. Purpose is discovered, and Jesus is glorified. This is why.